Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I congratulate the Honourable Member for Rotherham for securing this afternoon's debate, and can I start by anticipating perhaps some of the things that my honourable friend on the front bench may be choosing to say at the end of today's debate. And as my excellent successor, no doubt he is extremely well briefed in terms of some of the points that he will choose to make at the close of this debate to the points that have been raised by so many colleagues this afternoon. So I first want to say, in my most understanding mode, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I understand that when you have the sharpest economic contraction for 300 years, that it is necessary to review aid spending that is linked to the size of the economy, and the £2.9 billion that had to be removed from the budget as a result of that economic contraction is something that I can understand. Unfortunate, but I can understand it. I can also understand the defence that the Minister will no doubt put up to the fact that in the International Development Assistance Act, there is a clause which says that under extreme circumstances, of course, the government can come to Parliament and outline an explanation for why they did not meet 0.7% in a particular year. I'm also anticipating that the Minister in his response will point to the fact that the UK is continuing to spend £10 billion this year in terms of overseas development assistance, and as any one of us would accept, that is a very large amount of money. And I think that when you're spending a large amount of money, it's always important to review it and see if you're spending it wisely, and therefore doing a zero-based budget exercise, which is effectively what the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office has just gone through, by looking at every line item of expenditure, is something that any prudent government should do from time to time. But where I begin to depart from agreeing with what my honourable friend is likely to say at the conclusion of this debate is around the change to 0.5, to go deliberately into a financial year and changing that percentage point without testing the will of Parliament to agree to it. And that's where I think we're getting onto rather difficult legal and constitutional ground, because of course we all went into the last general election with a pledge to meet 0.7%. It was something that 100% of MPs were elected on. And of course, the law does state that 0.7 is what we should be aiming to achieve, apart from an inadvertent inability to meet that due to economic circumstances. And I feel very passionately, Madam Deputy Speaker, that those of us who are expressing concerns this afternoon are really expressing the concerns of those who are most affected, who are unable to voice their opposition to this. Of course, when you break a manifesto pledge, it's usually voters at the next general election who are affected by it who will vote you out. But of course, in this case, those who are most affected by this will, according to my right honourable friend, the member for Halton Price and Howden, very likely be dead by the time of the next election and not able to lobby a UK Member of Parliament. And as my right honourable friend was saying about polling, no doubt the Minister may also allude to the fact that this it doesn't poll badly in the United Kingdom, because those affected are not themselves being polled, and those being polled are not themselves affected. Now, the Prime Minister last week, in response to the Prime Minister's question...
There's been lots of backwards and forwards on this, but the simple truth is it very much depends on the question you ask. One of the effects of these cuts is to fall on starvation relief, on drought relief, on medical support. If you put to the public, do you want to give emergency aid to people starving to death, you get 92% in favour.
Indeed, an excellent point. And of course, in terms of vaccine vaccinating the world. People are very strongly in favour of vaccinating the world, and that's why I very much welcome the pledge that was made at the G7, which I understand will be in addition to the 0.5, and no doubt the Minister will confirm that. I give way to my honourable friend.
Also on the subject of polling, the British Foreign Policy Group, which is hardly a right-wing organisation, polled this earlier this year that 72% of people would like to see a cessation or reduction in aid until the financial situation is resolved. We're in danger of batting these figures backwards and forwards. We must rely upon what we hear on the doorstep. And I don't know what her doorsteps are like, but mine are quite unequivocal in this matter.
Well, what I would say is that there is one poll that I would like to take, and that's the one that Mr. Speaker has asked us to take in this House, and that is a vote on whether the 0.7 should be changed to 0.5 on a forward planning basis. And that's the poll that I would like to take, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week, in response to the Prime Minister's question from my right honourable friend, the member for Sutton Coldfield, the Prime Minister indicated that today's debate on the estimates was that vote. And I've looked into the matter, and I understand that if we were to vote down today's estimates, not only would all diplomats stop being paid immediately, but also that a vote against estimates can only be done to reduce a budget rather than to increase a budget. So that's why I'm perfectly happy to support today's estimates, but would like to see a separate standalone vote on whether we should go to from 0.7 to 0.5. Because if this House agrees, then I don't have any problems with the constitutional situation. I think that that would override what's in the International Development Assistance Act. And I think that what we need to see here is for a test of the poll of the members of this House. Now, I'm delighted to see that the economy is recovering very fast at the moment here in the UK, and that means that I hope that next year's budget for overseas development assistance can start to increase once again. I'm also delighted that the UK and Kenya are jointly co-hosting the replenishment of the Global Partnership for Education at the end of July, and I very much welcome the £430 million that the Prime Minister announced at the recent G7 towards global education. It is the single best investment we can make in the future of our planet in terms of making sure that every child gets 12 years of quality education. We all know how much that unlocks in terms of economic prosperity, in terms of a better climate, in terms of a healthier society. So that is an incredibly important thing to be doing. And can I suggest to the Minister that in encouraging a successful replenishment of the $5 billion that the Global Partnership for Education is seeking, that we offer, as our economy grows, to match fund contributions from other donor countries around the world. I think that would be a really positive way of saying, if you'll put more money in, we'll put more money in here in the UK. I also would like to see a reversal of that 85% reduction to the UNFPA in terms of family planning. I want every girl in the world to be able to access the same choices in terms of family planning as we were all able to access in our lives. And I think that in terms of countries around the world, one of the most alarming anecdotes I heard in terms of the impact of this reduction in aid spending is that in South Sudan, the World Food Programme is saying that they are now having to choose between feeding hungry children and feeding starving children. And so I would urge the Minister to put that very much at the top of his shopping list as his budget increase next year. But in conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, let's not argue about which poll says what. Let's have a poll in this place on this issue. Tonight's vote is not the vote on that. Let's have a separate one.